the Chris Tucker that we got now is Epstein Island Chris Tucker, not Smokey.
Oh, Lord.
What is happening in Hollywood that a guy that tough will be on the street waving a gun, screaming, "They are trying to kill me"?
Yeah.
What's going on? Why is Dave Chappelle going to Africa? Why does Mariah Carey make a $100 million deal and take her clothes off on TRL? A weak person cannot get to sit here and talk to you. Ain't no weak people talking to you. So what is happening in Hollywood?
These Epstein-like characters have existed throughout history, whether they were kings or what, human beings are human beings universally. So everybody is a supply.
The moment those trending files hit the public domain, something shifted in Hollywood. Millions of documents, thousands of images, hundreds of videos were released by the Department of Justice after years of legal pressure and a congressional mandate. Almost immediately, a specific type of celebrity went silent. Not retired, not on vacation, just suddenly and noticeably out of sight. Katt Williams and Dave Chappelle have been speaking for years about how Hollywood actually works, not in vague jokes, but in direct claims about systems, names, and patterns the industry prefers to keep hidden. At first, most people dismissed it as comedy talk, just opinions from two entertainers. But then the documents dropped. Executives stepped back, agencies started cutting ties, and deals quietly disappeared. And suddenly, Katt Williams and Dave Chappelle didn't look like comedians with opinions anymore. They looked like the two people who had been observing everything long before it became visible.
Offender Jeffrey Epstein have been released in the US. Among the files are details of Epstein's contacts book, which offers a glimpse into the sheer number of his wealthy and powerful associates. Today is the legal deadline for the Justice Department to make the information public, although the Deputy Attorney General said earlier that not everything will be released in time to meet that deadline. Let's go straight to our correspondent, Tom Bateman, who is in Washington tonight. The scale of this release, Tom, is huge. What are we learning so far?
Well, this is a case, Jane, remember, that has convulsed the political system here in Washington, and the release of these files have been demanded by Congress, who in the end forced the hand of President Trump to create this legal deadline today. Now, we were expecting the files to be released around 8 p.m. UK time. In the end, they were a little over an hour late, and this is a vast trove of information. They've been released on the Department of Justice's website, categorized into former investigative records, files themselves that the Department of Justice had been looking into, now made public, and many, many new photographs.
The files include pictures of Bill Clinton, here appearing to be in a hot tub and in a swimming pool. The images are undated and without a clear location, but they are in a batch that appear to show Epstein in a series of foreign locations. Another shows the former president alongside Epstein himself.
To do there, but I think in terms of the political response to this, the Department of Justice and the White House have been under huge pressure to pivot away from Mr. Trump having previously appeared to oppose the disclosure this year. His hand was forced, including by members of his own party, and we saw really full consensus in Congress for today's release. Now, the technical deadline was midnight. They've got this trove out before that. But we heard from the Department of Justice earlier today that many, many more hundreds of thousands of pages of files will still be released in the coming weeks. Now, that has already got Democrats on the House committee that had helped pressure this situation pretty angry, because they regard this as not being enough already, and they've been saying that in the run-up to it today. They are already accusing the administration of a cover-up, and they say a denial of justice.
Before anything else, it's important to understand how massive this document release really was. In December 2025, the U.S. Department of Justice released the first batch of records tied to Jeffrey Epstein's case, including photographs, investigative files, and evidence materials. The release immediately triggered backlash because large portions were heavily redacted, leaving entire sections blacked out. Survivors were outraged, lawmakers demanded answers, and the public was left with more questions than clarity. Then on January 30th, 2026, everything escalated. The DOJ released over 3 million pages of records, including emails, images, and video material. That release changed the entire atmosphere in Hollywood. Names began appearing in contact logs and email chains. Musicians, executives, directors, financiers, and major industry figures. To be clear, being mentioned does not imply criminal wrongdoing, and the Justice Department confirmed there is no official client list. But in an industry built on perception, association alone carries weight.
Documents will be similar types of documents to the ones we've had before, so things like flight logs on Epstein's plane, photographs, there are videos as well. Interestingly, which I don't think was true before Christmas, you had to sign a waiver to look at these documents, a kind of age-related waiver, which suggests that there may be some material in there that they believe could be, difficult or unsuitable for children to look at. And he did mention in his press conference, Todd Blanche, that that some of the material might be pornographic. We don't know to what degree that would be redacted. Certainly he's redacted, or they're redacting all the pictures of women in these files, but they've also said there could be mistakes because of the sheer amount of material, and they have this email address where people who feel their images or their material has been released erroneously can kind of email in. So it'll take a long time to assess the nature of this dump. It does comply finally with the bill that was passed in Congress. It's late, but it does comply. There is a small number of documents that may still be being held back at the moment in the Southern District of New York. That seems to be related to a particular court order there. And I think people will just start trawling through to see if there's anything new. It's worth pointing out that as far as we know, there are no active criminal investigations into others in terms of Epstein, and who's dead, of course, and Ghislaine Maxwell, his co-conspirator, who's in prison. We don't know of any other investigations relating to his activities. And in terms of President Trump and other high-profile figures, none of the victims have ever made an accusation against Donald Trump, nor Bill Clinton, indeed, who has featured heavily in some of the previous releases.
Yes, and we heard within that news conference, Todd Blanche say
the scale of the release meant one thing: months of investigation. Journalists, researchers, and the public began combing through the material. As names continued to surface, something else became impossible to ignore: silence. Certain corners of the entertainment industry stopped speaking entirely. No statements, no responses, just distance. To understand why Katt Williams matters in this context, you have to go back to January 2024. His appearance on Shannon Sharpe's Club Shay Shay podcast became one of the most watched interviews of the year. In a nearly 3-hour conversation, he named names, challenged the industry, and declared 2024 the year of truth. At the time, it was mostly dismissed as comedy, exaggeration, entertainment, or industry drama. But Williams wasn't being vague. He described a system where powerful figures protect each other, where loyalty comes with consequences, and where those who refuse to comply are pushed out.
I feel like Dave Chappelle owe him a check is because when Dave Chappelle did the Dallon situation, I feel like Dave Chappelle should have gave that boy a check, because that Dallon skit that Dave Chappelle did actually helped blow Dave Chappelle up. 100%, no matter how that sounds. And I was the reason, Chopper, they'll tell you, why we even did the Chappelle show. Is because the first, I think it's the first season of Making the Band, it came out, and the Dave Chappelle show came out. Like, I like comedy, me, you dig? I can lay back and watch comedy all day and night. Corey Mahokam and all them people, I can watch them all night. I seen the Dave Chappelle show come out, and when we came back for season 2, I was just telling them, like, y'all gotta watch this Dave Chappelle, and everybody looked at me weird. But the publicist, who was actually Keith Murray, either baby mama or wife or something, she was actually our publicist. And she was like, he is funny, isn't he? I was like, yeah, you should get it. You should try to contact him. And next thing you know, she contacted him and came to the house. And that's how we ended up doing the Dave Chappelle skit. Thanks, Chop.
So that's what it was then. That's the reason why Dallon wasn't showing up to the meetings and all that.
Yes, that's exactly why. Dallon ain't show up because he felt like he can do better by himself. He already had the fame and the popularity. So why not? You dig? And to me, honestly, I should have done the same. My old young dumb duck ass. I guess that's why when they say 18 and over, you should probably be 18 and over, because my young dumb ass ain't know no better. I was rubies getting all the
So I want to deep dive a little bit more into this Tommy Mottola connection with Jeffrey Epstein. Rolling Stone did this huge article on Tommy Mottola and Jeffrey Epstein, and they start referencing how there was a problem that Tommy Mottola was having after being kicked out with his wife from a Palm Beach hotel and spa. According to the Rolling Stone, one of the emails that I went over the other day actually have something to do with the situation of Tommy and his wife being kicked out of this hotel spa. Now, we don't know specifically what happened with Tommy Mottola and his wife at this spa for them to get kicked out, but if you know Jeffrey Epstein and the saga, it's really odd because he was known to pick up victims at spas like this. And for whatever reason, Tommy Mottola felt the person that could help him with the situation that he was having was Epstein. There is a whole rabbit hole behind a lawyer that they talk about in this email. So Jeffrey Epstein tells Tommy Mottola to call him again, and Tommy Mottola said, "I'm telling someone my older sister is sick and I came home." And then Jeffrey said, "Look up Bradley Edwards." And Tommy Mottola says, "Is this the lawyer that she hired?" And then Epstein says, "Cousin." When I saw the name Brad Edwards, I was kind of shook because I know that this is a lawyer that represents so many survivors of Epstein. Then remember, I found the old articles that said that Brad Edwards wanted to depose some of Epstein's famous friends, one being Tommy Mottola, back in 2009 after the Palm Beach case, because those survivors were coming forward filing lawsuits, kind of like we saw in the 2019 Southern District of New York case. And Jeffrey Epstein was actually trying to fight this, but then I found out that Jeffrey Epstein actually sued this lawyer named Brad Edwards. Like I said, this was the lawyer that also represented Virginia Giuffre back in 2009 with her lawsuit with Epstein. And Epstein actually settled with Virginia Giuffre for $500,000 in this lawsuit, so it didn't go to court. And that settlement document from Virginia Giuffre settling with Jeffrey Epstein was released to the public.
Williams didn't just make claims. He described patterns he said he'd seen over decades in the industry. He mentioned figures like Steve Harvey, Kevin Hart, Tyler Perry, and Diddy, not always in terms of direct accusations, but as examples of a system built on protection and influence. What makes that interview stand out is what happened afterward. By late 2024, several of the dynamics he spoke about started appearing in mainstream headlines. Investigations surfaced, arrests followed, and suddenly his comments were being revisited in a completely different light. Dave Chappelle's story connects differently. In 2005, he walked away from a $50 million deal for Chappelle's show, a move that shocked the industry. Over the years, he has spoken about pressure, discomfort behind the scenes, and choosing personal peace over fame. His comedy since returning often breaks character mid-performance, shifting from jokes to direct commentary about power, control, and what it costs to speak honestly in entertainment.
Committee LA 28 is standing by its chairman, Casey Wasserman. Wasserman's name is in the latest batch of Epstein files. He traveled on Epstein's private jet once and later exchanged racy emails with Epstein conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell. Today, LA 28's executive board issuing a statement saying they've reviewed the situation and Wasserman fully cooperated. They say his relationship with Epstein and Maxwell did not go beyond what is publicly known, and given Wasserman's strong leadership, he will be staying on as chairman of.
He settles literally right before this is supposed to go to trial. And during this defamation lawsuit that Epstein filed against this lawyer, tons of women were going to come and testify against Epstein because Epstein sued Brad Edwards for trying to add his rich friends into being deposed in some of these women's lawsuits. Not about anything criminal, but about being around Epstein a lot, according to these survivors or victims. Some of these now women named Tommy Mottola as being someone who was around Jeffrey Epstein a lot back in 2009 because this is all stemming from the Palm Beach case. So with knowing that Brad Edwards represented so many of these victims, he also represented Virginia Giuffre, who settled with Epstein, who put in that clause that she couldn't go after him or people that were like his co-defendants in any more litigation. Brad Edwards settling with Epstein himself them talking about other deals that they had, which I assume is probably with litigations with other of Epstein's survivors that maybe Brad represented. It really makes me wonder why Epstein was telling Tommy Mottola after he named Brad Edwards that he was safe. Tommy Mottola really didn't seem so sure. He said, "Are you sure? I don't have to do anything, just shut up and lay low." And it really makes me wonder. Now, this is not a fact, I don't know, but it is something that I want to know. I wonder if this is because maybe another one of these girls that they are talking about in this message did a settlement like Virginia Giuffre, where it says that they cannot go after anybody else. We know when Prince Andrew tried to use that clause against Virginia that she couldn't go after any co-conspirators of Epstein because of that settlement that she did with Epstein. It didn't work because she tried to argue that it didn't happen in Florida, so you're not viewed as like a co-conspirator. And according to the Rolling Stone, I find it weird that they are reporting that this incident about this email was something that happened with Tommy Mottola at the Palm Beach Hotel and Spa, which would be in Florida. So to me, it does bring big questions if maybe he fell under somebody's clause in a settlement agreement, and this is why Epstein's saying, "Don't worry, you're safe," and bringing up Brad Edwards. Brad Edwards did say when he was dealing with all of these lawsuits against Epstein, and even the one that Epstein filed against him, that he was being watched and followed during this decade-long pursuit of Epstein. Edwards even hired his own private investigator to follow private investigators that Epstein had assigned to track.
There are also conversations around Chappelle's early rise and how industry connections, timing, and collaborations shaped his breakout period. Some close to the entertainment world have pointed out that early exposure and key industry support played a role in accelerating his success. Like many careers in Hollywood, outcomes are rarely shaped by talent alone. Relationships, timing, and access often decide who gets seen and who doesn't.
You talked about Blue Streak.
I love that dude.
He played a role in your life, I believe. How do you feel about him as a person, as an artist?
Martin Lawrence is the guy that showed everybody you can make it from DC to Hollywood. And I had a personal stake in his success. Every time he did something, it made me feel inspired and really good. And he was always real nice to me. He'd sit me down, "What's going on with you, baby boy? What? We'd talk about comedy, whatever." And, when we did Blue Streak, we were promoting it, and Martin had a stroke. He almost died. And then after that, I saw him, and I was like, "Oh my God, Martin, are you okay?" And he said, "I got the best sleep I ever got in my life." That's how tough he is. So let me ask you this. What is happening in Hollywood that a guy that tough will be on the street waving a gun, screaming, "They are trying to kill me"?
Yeah.
What's going on? Why is Dave Chappelle going to Africa? Why does Mariah Carey make a $100 million deal and take clothes off on TRL? A weak person cannot get to sit here and talk to you. Ain't no weak people talking to you. So what is happening in Hollywood? Nobody knows. The worst thing to call somebody is crazy, is dismissive. But I don't understand this person, so they're crazy. That's bullshit.
When the documents were released and executives began quietly stepping away from projects, when agencies started losing high-profile clients, and when deals were paused without explanation, it began to resemble the same system Williams and Chappelle had been describing for years. Not as speculation, but as structure. The fallout in 2026 was immediate but quiet. Major figures found unexpected connections surfacing in records. Agencies faced pressure. Some executives stepped down or reshaped their companies entirely. There was no public explosion, only gradual withdrawal.
Were filed late Wednesday, and they're a part of a lawsuit by the U.S. Virgin Islands. They reveal new testimony under oath from Mary Erdos, the head of the bank's Asset and Wealth Management Department. She said J.P. Morgan was aware by 2006 that Epstein was accused of paying cash to have underage girls and young women brought to his home. Although concerns were raised internally in 2006 and Epstein was convicted of in 2008, JP Morgan continued its relationship as a client with him until 2013. The new filings reveal that JP Morgan compliance staff brought up their concerns repeatedly. In 2010, one official said that Epstein, quote, should go. In 2011, other staffers discussed news articles connecting Epstein to human trafficking of underage girls. That evidence appears to be the basis for a new count in the U.S. Virgin Islands suit, which alleges the bank obstructed the federal government's investigation into Epstein's violation of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. Epstein's large cash withdrawals drew the attention of bank compliance staff in 2006, who noted that he routinely withdrew $40,000 to $80,000 in cash several times per month, according to the suit. The transactions continued in the years after Epstein's guilty plea, though JP Morgan accepted his explanation that the money was for fuel and landing fees for his planes, even during years when Epstein was under house arrest. That's according to the USVI suit as well. JP Morgan declined to comment on the new filings, but JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon was interviewed on CNN last week, and he was asked if JP Morgan should have acted more quickly against Epstein rather than waiting years.
Katt Williams also spoke about something that now feels more relevant than ever: turning down massive financial deals. He claimed he refused multiple $50 million offers because of what was expected in return behind the scenes. At the time, it sounded extreme to many people. But in hindsight, it raises a different question. What kind of cost makes someone walk away from that level of money? As more connections and discussions continue to surface, those decisions look less like stubborn pride and more like calculated awareness. The industry response, meanwhile, follows a familiar pattern. Carefully worded statements, legal distancing, and clarification that being mentioned does not equal wrongdoing, which is true and officially confirmed. But most remain silent. And in Hollywood, silence is rarely empty. It is strategy.